Now, elections are among the most effective ways of promoting participation in governance, representation, and uniting diverse groups where the process is free, fair, and just. Nigeria has conducted many elections and witnessed a plethora of electoral problems, which the roots lay in systemic disjuncture amid efforts by government and election management bodies to transform the electoral processes and safeguard the integrity of election outcomes. Now, while there has been persistent agitation against exclusion, the government has made some efforts to use legislation and eliminate the semblance of disparity in opportunities for elective positions. The essence is to mitigate exclusion that countermands the quest for inclusive electoral process. However, monetized politics introduced and sustained by older politicians remain a disincentive for the youth participation. Welcome once again to Fafanua Afrika, and I am elated for the guests that will be joining us on the show today. Now, without further ado, joining me to discuss this are academic and media personality in Nigeria, Wisdom Mwoga. Thank you so much, Wisdom, for joining me. Now, we also have development enthusiast in Nigeria, Ogunlade Olamide. Thank you, Ogunlade, for joining me. Well, he'll join us shortly. And finally, we have political analyst in Nigeria, Ferdy Adimefi. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
It's my pleasure. All right, thank you, gentlemen. I mean, it's a men's affair, but I won't allow that because I'm the host and I'm a woman. But anyway, so let's go straight into our conversation. Now, it's a day to the election, and we're seeing a lot of turnout from the youth, and this is a change in the narrative, because for the longest time there's been the narrative that youth do not exactly participate, and the turnout that we have from youth, especially in Nigeria, are usually low. But this time around, people are coming out en masse to support their own candidate. So we will be having this conversation void of mentioning any political party, but still passing the message across. So once again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Now let's go straight to our conversation. And I will be starting by asking Wisdom, how would we rate the youth participation in recent times? All right, I think while we wait for Wisdom, let me go to Ogunlade. Could you tell us what you think about the rate at which the youth participation now is surfacing in recent times?
All right, thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, to answer your question straight on, I think it's largely connected to the frustration in the land, if I may say that, and also because of the recent NSAS movements that got the attention of the youth to protest against establishment and systems that were not favorable to them. Against the elections of 2019, now you see more interest demonstrated by the youth. It's not going to be an election that will be decided by the youth, and then it's not going to be a force-free election or a result handed over by people to the youth, but will be solely decided by the youth. So I think if I want to be blunt in my response to you, the manifest frustration in the land, how perfectly the system has excluded the youth in the scheme of things, and how they think that this demography is so important, than to be silenced. When you look at all these factors together, it will be safe to conclude that the youth are now taking up the responsibility, to be a part of the electoral process. So, I mean, the reasons are very clear; they are obvious. And that's why you see them in their numbers being a part of the process.
Now, Ferdy, I would like for us to also talk about the trigger. Why are we seeing so much youth participation in recent times? What would you say has triggered that?
Well, I think it's a combination of many things. First of all, remember the NSAS. A lot of young people got involved, and they realized that the protest, though was effective in galvanizing the crowd and getting more young people to become politically aware, it did not really bring about the change we needed. And one of the things we started to realize, for us to be able to see that change, it had to go through an electoral process. And between that NSAS period and now, at least about 25% of new voters signed up to vote. And that's part of why this election is defining, because we're seeing people show up for the first time. But that's one aspect. When you look deeper again and look at the performance of this present administration in the last 8 years, there is very little impact in the way of job creation So we're seeing that inflation is at record high time. When you look at unemployment, it's about 35% now. So really, the impact on the young people with high rate of unemployment, high rate of inflation, it's very, very huge, right? Then we just came out of 8 month strike. So when you look at the young people who are in universities, they are stuck there, not able to move forward. So a vulnerable economy that has really been falling beneath the global performance ratio, an NSAS protest that was met with violence, and also the climate, the state of things in the country. It's demanding that every young person should identify, right? I personally, as an entrepreneur, I can tell you for a fact that the population of people migrating from the country is impacting on the businesses, right? Talent is getting more scarce, right? And it's on many levels. So I really think that all of these factors is adding up to why people are very passionate about this next election and looking forward to vote. I, for one, am one of them.
All right, it's good to hear that. All right, Ogunlade, once again, what do we say about the youth participation? Do we think that these interests in politics are fleeting? I mean, we've seen the factors that can contribute to them wanting to come out on mass to vote, but do you think that it will last long or is just fleeting?
Well, I just hope that it lasts long. I mean, we've seen, so many moments in the history of this country where the youth also have taken their destinies into their hands. But then we have also seen how successfully the political class, have tried to manipulate the interests of the youth to suit their own concerns. So I personally, I think the NSAS movement should have been a political movement, but it's not too late. And then, like what the last speaker said, the manifest disappointment of the present administration is something that should, trigger a long interest, on the part of the youth. So I really hope that this will not just be about election, but about governance. I mean, we've seen a lot of people train up in political rallies and campaigns. But then the question I ask myself is, how relevant are these people in governance? And then we are dealing with an establishment, those who seems to be an authority in this field. So beyond just coming out en masse to be a part of rallies and campaigns, how relevant are we going to be in the governance process? I think that's a conversation that we should be having. And no country, and I repeat again, no country can successfully develop without enlisting the concerns of the youth. This demography is just so huge that we can't afford to not enlist them in the scheme of things. So I don't want to believe that it's just going to be for the process or for the time being, but I think it's something that should take us much deeper. I mean, whosoever will be the next president at any level, be it at the national, subnational, or even at the state level, I want to see how they will incorporate the concerns of youth and how youth will be a part of decision making at any level in this country. And then we can begin to counter against.
All right, thank you, Ogunlade and Ferdy, for that. Now, while we wait for Wisdom's audio, we will go on, a short break, or we'll take a look at these opinions from the youth across Africa, especially Nigerians, as regarding their participation in the elections, the forthcoming elections, which is already tomorrow. We want to know what the youths think about it and how they intend to participate. Do take a look.
2020 elections are here, and we as youths have learned our lessons and are galvanized to change the story and the history and the path of Nigeria. Prior to now, we as electorates have been burnt and have been scalded by broken promises, also by the government, which have been immune and turned deaf ears to the travails and the predicaments of Nigerians. And now, as youths, it's time to rise up, choose the leaders that we know and we trust, who are competent, who have the capacity, who are trustworthy, who can produce and give good results and change the history and the paths of Nigeria. And I indulge all youths to come out tomorrow and vote.
On Saturday, February 25, Nigeria will be having its first general elections in 4 years and one of the crucial ones in 8 years, which means that a new president will be taking the mantle. And it is very, very important that Nigerians take this election seriously, especially the youths, which make up a huge chunk of the voting population. As we know, in 2019, one of the things that marked the election was low voters turnout, where less than 35% of Nigerians went out there to vote. It's very, very critical at this juncture where our democracy is at stake for every Nigerian to take this seriously. So I'm calling on all Nigerian youths like myself to go out there on Saturday and vote.
Young people in Nigeria used to be of the opinion that, oh, my votes do not matter, my opinion does not matter, especially in elections. But right now, we've seen a huge change. There has been a huge shift in the mentality of young people, and this has come to play in their attitude towards election. National election is tomorrow in Nigeria, and we've seen a lot of young people not only drive other young people who they influence in one way or the other in getting their PVCs, they have also driven them in positive ways to make sure they cast their votes and they cast their votes for the right person. I'm very sure never in the history of Nigeria had there been a situation where young people are so much involved in the electioneering process. Come tomorrow, a lot of young people are going to cast their votes, and they're going to cast their votes with the attitude that a new Nigeria lies in their hand and they can effect the change. Young people are so interested in this whole process because they feel they have been cheated a whole long while, and they have come to realize that, oh, our voices really matter.
One important factor to consider if we will be evaluating the impact of the youth on the general election is the population density or population ratio generally. Now, facts prove that about 70% of the Nigerian population accounts for people between the ages of 15 to 40. And as far as I'm concerned, these are the people that we can consider to be the youths. Now, elections as we know it, elections are games of numbers. Numbers win election. Therefore, when the higher population of the country is the youth, it only translates to the fact that the youth then are the major determiners of the outcome of the election. The youth are the main pushers and movers of the election. Therefore, the impact of the youth cannot be overemphasized.
The impact of the Nigerian youth at the 2023 elections cannot be overemphasized. Out of over 93 million people registered to vote, the youths within the age of 18 to 34 years have about 39%, and even middle-aged people that identify as youths from about 35 to 49 years old have about 35%. So with those statistics, you can see that the Nigerian youth are the majority of registered voters, and whoever majority of them would decide to vote for will be highly influential in who becomes Nigeria's next president or governor or senator, whatever the case may be. So I read somewhere that people from born from 1998 to 2003 will be voting a brand new president for the very first time, and let's see how our votes count at this election.
All right, Ogunlade, we're still continuing this conversation, and I would also like to know, do you think that these agitations and participation from the youth is strong enough to actually effect change? I mean, one of the people in the Vox Pop said that the youth are the major determinants of the outcome of the election. But do you think that the voices of the youth, their agitation and their participation is strong enough to effect change?
Oh yes, I strongly believe. You know, I mean, for a demography that has such a huge number, ideally, and I say ideally again because strange things happen here. But ideally, you expect that the concerns of these people ought to inform government policies, and then ought to accommodate huge significance in the scheme of things. So this manifest, interest that is being demonstrated by the youth is a strong message to the political class that one, good governance is no longer a privilege, but now a necessity for all. We are talking about a group of people who have the numbers, who have the skills, who have the expertise, who have the network, and who seems to be ahead in thought and reasoning. I'm sorry to say that, but that's a set of fact. And then you expect the government to now accommodate these people in the scheme of things. So I don't think that it's just for the fun of it, but it's rather be something that reasonable government should begin to look into. So now, as a startup, I expect that whichever wins, should the Ministry of Youth and Sport should be a youth, should produce a youth minister, commissioners, and maybe supervisors for several levels that we find ourselves. And then youth should also be given more, important position. Somebody said this thing to me when I was, discussing this with some people. He said, we are tired of having some people determine the future that they will not be a part of. Now we are talking about our future. And then the future that we have set for ourselves are better prepared for, by the youth. So I think this is an opportunity for us to show exactly what we have and what we can offer for the state that we find ourselves and begin to set the pace for good governance, which we have been agitating for.
All right, thank you, Ogunlade. I like that you mentioned the fact that good governance is no longer a privilege, but now a necessity. And that brings me to my second point. Ferdy, I would like for us to also talk about, now we've seen how impactful the decisions of the youth can be. But let's say that eventually, without reference to any political party in particular, let's say that the youths can eventually vote in the person they want. Do you think that any of these candidates are capable of bringing the change that Nigeria needs without reference to any of the political parties?
We have, among the three candidates, we have what I consider vibrant, I consider resourceful, even in the way from their track record. Now, all of these candidates bring something to the table. One of them, two of them have been former governors. One of them have been a former vice president. So there is something that they're bringing to the table. But we're at a critical time in the history of Nigeria. And what we want, we cannot afford to gamble, right? We want to have something that is proven. We have a situation where we are basically importing everything in the country. How can we convert and become a producing country? How do we create more jobs for our young people? How do we create that environment that can enable and empower young people to thrive? So I think they have something to give. But again, like I said, there is no time and chance enough to waste. We want to be able to put someone that is decisive, that have the political will, the industrious mind to be able to transform Nigeria into an industrious country. Or Nigeria is already an industrious country on a level, but at least be able to optimize and harness that industrial energy and channel them into building a global economy with what we have. So I really think they have something to give, but not all of them are required at this time, and not all of them are effective or strong enough to give us what we need as we move ahead.
Ogunlade, let's talk about the challenges that the youths face in, participating in politics and the electoral process generally. What do you think some of these challenges are?
Well, thank you so much. Like I did mention earlier, we are dealing with establishments. Those who think that politics is for their taking and there's nothing else nobody can do about that. We are dealing with people who say that it's either theirs or nobody else's. So, and that's that. And then we are also having the issue of, money now be the major determinant, of politics here. We have now gotten to a stage where if you don't have the resources, you just don't have the resources. Now you can't be a part of the process. And then we are dealing with structures and the problems of structures. I don't know if you are familiar with the saying recently that somebody would not emerge because there are no structures. So we are dealing with people who have successfully silenced, the place of an average Nigerian, and then replaced it very strongly with structures. And then you ask yourself, what are the interests of these structures? And how can you appeal to the interests of these structures? So when you look at these structures, there are people who, some of them are people referred to as cabal. I know at this cabal, maybe they are nameless or they are faceless, but then they determine the extent to which the wheels of governance will toe into. So for an average youth, the question is, where do I start? How will I break these structures? How will I get these resources? How will I confront this establishment? And now how will I effect the change that I so desire for my country? So it's like a case of somebody still trying to look for identity amidst complications and complexities. But then I think this is the right time for us to make a statement, and to make a statement very clearly.
All right, but why is it important, though, for the youths to participate? I mean, a lot of people, as simple as it may sound, a lot of people still don't see why their inputs are important, or why their inputs matter. So, Ferdy, would you like to tell us why it's important for the youth to participate?
I think that Nigeria is an incredibly young country. We're in a digital age. We need people who understand the global world. And young people participating allows for us to determine who becomes our president. And let's face it, a lot of the young people are the people who are leading us even now. The older ones started when they were in their 20s. A lot of them have been leading for that long. But I'm not really big on age. I'm really big on the fact that, yes, we're young. But apart from the age, what else do we bring to the table? The global economy is very competitive. Nigeria has a competitive advantage that we have not harnessed, right? And I think that young people, Nigeria has a huge talent base. How can we convert our population into a skilled economy? And how can we transform that skilled economy into a global economy? So there are different levels of conversation. But every young person today understands that their future is mortgaged. We can't now outsource our future to the older people. We have to participate in ultimately what becomes our own reality. We have to participate in what becomes our own experience. And I think that's where we're looking at it. I, for one, am excited about the prospects.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, it's time for us to go on a quick break. And when we come back, we'll still continue this very important conversation. And we'll also take you through some reactions on social media. Don't go anywhere.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Thank you for staying with us on Fafanua Afrika. We're still talking about the youth impact in the general elections taking place tomorrow. And we're hoping that our media personality, Wisdom Nwoga, can still join us before the end of the show. But we still have our other guests, development enthusiast in Nigeria, Ogunlade Olamide, and political analyst in Nigeria, Ferdy Adimefe. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for still being here with me. Now, we're still continuing our conversation, and I would like for us to look at another factor, and which is, vote buying. I want us to know how vulnerable the youths are. I know that they can, when they motivate each other, they can be very hyper and come out en masse to do things together. But how vulnerable do you think the Nigerian youth, the youth across Africa generally, can be when we're talking about vote buying? How easy do you think it is for them to cave in? Okay, I realized I didn't direct that question at anybody. So Ogunlade, can we have you give your opinion?
Yeah, thank you so much. Going by the latest statistics released by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, the NBS, about 131 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. And then when you break this further, by my own estimations anyway, I can say 80% of these numbers falls within the youth category. And then you look at the number of employments that has dropped significantly, the inflation figures that is also on the high side, double digits for a number of months now. And then you look at the manifest impacts as on the Nigerian youth. So I think we'll still have to struggle with the issue of vote buying. For my own personal survey, I got about 5 calls yesterday from younger colleagues of mine who got their September Empower allowances paid to them just yesterday overnight. I was asking myself, is this a form of vote buying, or a deliberate attempt of government to also swindle votes into their side of the game? And then what I'm just trying to say in essence is that it will only take courage for an average youth to want to say that, hey, I won't let this. And then when you look at the recent currency redesign and how exalted the Nigerian currency is now when it comes to scarcity and availability, 1,000, 2,000 naira might just be the magic that people will, rely on to determine the extent or the outcomes of the result. But then that is not going to be what we should be looking at now. I'm just saying in essence that, yes, this cannot entirely be taken away from the political class. We've seen how they've shouted, everywhere, saying that the CBN policies against their interest, and now Buhari is on his own way and on his own adventure. But then it will take courage, like I did mention, and a lot of discipline for you to be able to disregard some of these temptations that are coming from, from the political class. So I just pray that would, vote our conscience and allow the best people, to emerge at the end of the process. But then when you look at all this, the issues of,
Okay, thank you for that. We didn't get the last bit of your comments, but thank you for that all the same. And you also mentioned one problem that Nigeria has been faced with almost since the start of this year, which is the cash scarcity. So that brings me to my next question, Ferdy. Do you think that these twin problems, the cash crunch and the fuel scarcity, and looking at the long queues to get these two things, do you think it will affect the turnout for the voting tomorrow?
Well, it's really difficult to say. What might affect the turnout might not necessarily be the fuel scarcity or the cash scarcity, because ideally, some people vote places close to work or close to where they live. What I think might be a challenge is most people are complaining that they can't seem to locate where they will vote, and that is, we have less than 24 hours to the voting time, and then most people can't locate their places. Some people didn't collect their PVC. So I think that Nigerians, particularly young people, are energized enough not to be discouraged by the lack of the fuel scarcity or the cash scarcity. On the other side, the intention of the cash scarcity is to discourage vote buying. But many things are yet to be ascertained until tomorrow. How will this play out? No one knows. But we're just hopeful that a lot of people will be discouraged by wanting to collect money and selling their votes, but voting their conscience and the candidate they believe in. And ultimately, Nigeria will come out victorious. And I think that's what's important to me. So we will only know by tomorrow. I can't say for now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. And talking about some Nigerians being disenfranchised, Ogunlade, do you think that there is any solution to that? I mean, I think it's already too late for this year's election, but several times we've heard of cases where people can't get their PVCs or something just goes wrong and they're disenfranchised from voting. What do you think is a solution to that?
Okay, what can be done going forward will be just be in form of recommendations for subsequent elections. I can confirm that about 7 million persons have collected their PVCs, but then it's just beyond that. We've seen enough. In the last elections of 2019, quite a number also collected their PVCs prior to the elections. But then when you looked at the quality of voting and the management of results, and then what transpired in between voting and collation of results, then it tells us that there's a long way to go. So I think that non-state actors, religious institutions, opinion, and religious leaders, personal rulers, or institutions could also be a part of this process. I think INEC need to be more open with their books and more flexible, with how people engage them, and then the level of their feedbacks. I have a couple of people as well, a couple of friends who are yet to obtain their PVCs. And then just yesterday, a friend of mine called me how a number of students have been stranded in their universities right now, and they can't come down to Lagos or to where their voting points will be because of the fuel scarcity and how they are finding it hard to get cash to be able to move. And then that during election, there's restriction of movement. So these are technical ways to disenfranchise people. And then you look at what is happening in the north, come down to south, and more importantly, our own attitude as well. You see, I just pray that this election will be a sharp difference and variation from what we've always seen. During election, you see our youth going to their Twitter handles to make uncalled for suggestions and comments, and you see them playing football with elections. And then I see that this election will be quite different because people would naturally turn out and vote their conscience. But then everything still lies on the supposed umpire, which is INEC. INEC has continually assured us of, delivering a credible election, but then it's beyond INEC. Yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine that I'm worried about the manifest presence of military in a supposed democratic election. Yes, we might need them, but then it's supposed to be the duty of the police. Would this not scare people, particularly women who naturally scare on sight of military? Or are they calculated attempts to also ensure peace and security? These are the questions that we need to answer. And answer very, very quickly and effectively for subsequent election. I believe that the duties of election are the exclusive reserve of the Nigerian police and not the military. It is only in cases where there are issues that you now see the military being invited just to restore peace and go back to where they belong. But now what you see is military inflow everywhere. Are they supposed to be? Is that what to be the ideal? Since 1999, we've seen military preparing for democratic. So I'm always worried about these things, and then how it would maybe disenfranchise people who are even a dilemma to either come out or not. But then people have said that we need them to ensure peace. But then how do we, determine the extent of, how they deliver on these assignments? I'm just curious about the whole thing. And then the logistics. You see INEC saying that they have it all planned out, and then you still hear people on election. I hope that this will be different tomorrow or by Sunday when we start hearing, the news and getting feedback from the field. You see INEC saying there were delay in election transmission in sensitive material movement and the likes, and how police have connived with political parties just to permit me to say, wayo during the election. I hope this will not repeat itself in this election. So beyond, people also saying that I don't want to be a part because after all, I've been voting all this while and nothing is going to change. INEC to us to keep reassuring. The police need to be on top of the job. And then if we must still have the military, they must be civil. This is not a coup d'etat. This is an election that should usher in a new democratic atmosphere and then usher in good governance to the country. So people should not die because of an election.
All right, thank you so much for that, Ogunlade. And talking about the military being deployed to certain areas, the last time that happened, I believe that it has become a new fear unlocked for Nigerians because, in October, the last time it happened, there was more chaos and they were supposed to come quell the violence. So we don't know how that will turn out. And like you said, it's sort of something that creates fear and panic, but hopefully not this time around. Now, I think we have Wisdom with us. And Wisdom, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you for joining us. I'm glad you were able to join us before the end of this program. Now, I would just like to ask you, Wisdom, there's this thing that we see going on, especially on social media, the bandwagon mentality, where people tend to just, gravitate towards a particular political party because some influential people are saying, without having a mind of their own. Do you think this will have any effect on tomorrow's voting?
All right, thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very beautiful question. I'll give you a scenario. About 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, a popular politician named Nwoko, Ned, and Victor Wokolo, both from Delta State, they came to a university called University of Delta here in Agbo, the town of the vice presidential candidate. They were campaigning, but the crowd were revolting. One of those politicians have been in power for the past 16 years, and he's still coming back again. So the system has changed. There is a sort of revolutionary change that have, conscientized the people. There is no following what people are following. People are conscientized now. They know the best route for them when it comes to political issues, and they are ready to follow it regardless. I've heard a lot of people say, if you give me money, I go chop your money, I go vote who I want to vote for. And that is the mentality. People are conscientized. They want to vote who they want to vote for, regardless of what happens. When we look at the system, bastardized system, people are tired of the suffering. People are tired of, the various issues we've had in the past. And they feel that this is the right time for youth to be part of the system and rewrite the story. It saddens my heart that whenever we have politicians from the age of, 50s, 50s, we are always jubilating that we have youth. What happened to 20? What happened to 25? Go to other countries of the world. We have younger people in political office. But here in Nigeria, look at what we have. Whenever we have 50 and 50, we are rejoicing. So this mentality needs to change. And people need to understand that what is worth doing is what's doing well. Regardless of the political party, we must set the standard and vote the right person. I'm an INEC official. I'm just coming from the INEC office. And we have thousands of youths who are participating as ad hoc staff and presiding officer in one of the local governments in Agbo here, which happens to be the town of the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. And we have people with like minds who are ready to do what is needed people who are not set to pervert justice, people who are ready to make sure that election counts. If I speak on behalf of INEC, the one of the missions of INEC is to make sure that election is credible and fair, and that is the mission. For those of us who are in the system, we are going to make sure that this election comes out credible and fair.
Ferdy, I would also like to bring this to our attention. Now, we see a wave, and this is one conversation we're having on one of the shows on News Central TV yesterday. There's a wave of revolting and challenging of results, and that has brought about fear, especially Nigerians, for the forthcoming elections. For example, in Kenya, when William Ruto was announced winner, Raila Odinga came out to contest the results, and a lot of others. So there's this fear that, okay, if one political party wins, let's say the person that the masses want wins, what is to say that the other party would not come out to challenge the result and maybe eventually win? Okay, unfortunately, we don't have 30, but Wisdom, can you say anything about that?
All right. When we look at the incident that happened in Osun State, between Adeleke and the other guy, I think
yes.
The system should allow INEC to be independent. The name is Independent National Electoral Commission. I don't know a country where the judicial system are in charge of declaring who the winner is or not. INEC has conducted the election, INEC has declared the winner, and the judicial system, the Supreme Court or the Appeal Court or whatever, is coming to declare a winner. I think that is an aberration. It's a slap on the INEC as a body. INEC mission is to deliver election. So if INEC has conducted, if INEC has declared an election and declared the winner, I see no reason why a Supreme Court judge or a judge will go back again to declare a winner. So these are the issues that we are looking at, and I'm happy that INEC has put in place a system that will curtail all these issues of overvoting, where somebody will just come out from nowhere and say we have overvoted in so region. I'm the one operating the BVAS machine in my unit come tomorrow, and the BVAS machine, the bimodal voters accreditation system, will tell you how many persons were registered in a particular polling unit. And once you are done accrediting, it will tell you how many persons have been accredited, and it will be an aberration for you as a presiding officer to give us 100 votes when we have only 50 persons being accredited in your unit. You will be prosecuted for that. So the computer system has been programmed for that. So whenever INEC declares their results, I plead with the other candidates to accept, because INEC has been given that independent power to do what they are doing. So nobody should want to interfere. The court system should not come and interfere.
Right.
I don't know when the court becomes, an electoral body to interfere on election issues.
All right, thank you so much for that wisdom. Very well said. Now, quickly, Ogunlade, the Not Too Young to Run is an act of parliament which seeks to reduce the age limit of running for elective offices in Nigeria. And this was signed by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2018. So why do we still see that the over 60s are ruling and still running for election?
I think I've said this earlier. That is about the high cost of obtaining nomination forms or even expression of interest forms of major political parties. Let's not deceive ourselves. We know who the major political parties are. They are the PDP, APC, and until recently Labour Party. If you want to get nominated on the platform of any of these political parties, you know the millions you have to part with. And then an average Nigerian, an average youth who is still looking for survival, striving for survival, I'm not sure he'll be able to depart, with such a humongous amount of money because he wants to rescue his country, as the case may be. So the cost of obtaining political party nomination and for you to even express your interest to be a part of the process is very, very high. Somebody has said that we are not short of policies and legislations. We are only short of men and people who can drive this policy. So I think that is the major reason why you see youths not being a part of the process, because they can't just afford to either upon the establishment that I mentioned or to muzzle out the finances to actively play on the stage.
All right, thank you so much for that, Ogunlade. And thanks to all our guests, the academic and media personality Wisdom, who was able to join us towards the end, but still gave really profound words. We really appreciate you. We also have development enthusiast in Nigeria, Ogunlade Olamide, and political analyst in Nigeria, Ferdy Adimefe. Right now, we'll take you through some tweets very quickly of what the youth are saying about the elections in Nigeria. Do take a look. presidential vote scheduled for February 25 presents a rare chance for millions of young Nigerians, many of them new voters, to make their elders listen. Now, Chimeze says, my country will be going to the polls tomorrow. This election is the first time my generation will be leading the charge in deciding the next Nigerian president. Thus far, I am so proud of youth participation in campaign. From Germany, I wish you all a very peaceful election. That's someone in the diaspora who obviously could not come to vote, wishing Nigerians a peaceful election. Hopefully that's how it goes. All right, well, and now we have quotes from great men and women who have come and gone, leaving some messages for us to live by. And these are some of the quotes that we have for you for today. Do take a look. Well, one of the quotes that I was able to pick from there is, the ballot is stronger than the bullet. It's been an amazing 1 hour packed program for today. Don't forget, go out and vote tomorrow. My name is Blessings Mosugu. Join us again next week for another beautiful edition and episode of Fafanua Afrika. Till then, do have a lovely day.